Now, President Trump arrived in Israel after a two-day visit to Saudi Arabia, where he says King Salman assured him the Saudis want peace between the Israelis and Palestinians and roadblocks imposed against Iranian threats. Describing a war of good against evil, Trump called on Muslim leaders to stamp out extremism during a widely anticipated address in Saudi Arabia. Now, the president also laid out his plan for U.S. policy in the Middle East. More now from viewer Steve Herman, who was with the president on Sunday in Riyadh.
Donald Trump offered a message of reconciliation along with a blunt challenge to Muslim leaders.
A better future is only possible if your nations drive out the terrorists and drive out the extremists. Drive them out. Drive them out of your places of worship. Drive them out of your communities.
Trump used notably milder language on Islam, calling it one of the world's great faiths, and downplaying the notion of a clash of civilizations.
This is not a battle between different faiths, different sects, or different civilizations. This is a battle between good and evil.
The address was also meant to reassure Arab leaders, many of whom have bristled at U.S. presidents raising human rights concerns.
We are not here to lecture. We are not here to tell other people how to live, what to do, who to be, or how to worship. Instead, we are here to offer partnership based on shared interests and values.
That is a contrast from President Barack Obama's 2009 address in Cairo, which offered a new beginning with the Muslim world conditioned on human rights.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total...
Trump's language also differed from his own presidential campaign when he declared that Islam hates us and proposed a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. During his trip to Saudi Arabia, Trump hardly mentioned human rights, instead focusing on business deals and weapons sales.
Hundreds of billions of dollars of investments into the United States and jobs, jobs, jobs.
It is a message that is well received by some Arab leaders. The Saudis especially spared no expense to make Trump feel welcome. But it is unclear how effective they will be at heeding Trump's call to crack down on extremism, says Georgetown University's Jocelyn Cesari, who spoke via Skype.
But the reality is that these leaders are themselves discredited vis-à-vis populations that have been living under very oppressive, repressive regime, that have been using as much political violence as the extremists.
Next up for Trump, talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, followed by a visit to Bethlehem to confer with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, and then on to Vatican City to meet with Pope Francis. Steve Herman, VOA News, Riyadh.
Well, now for more perspective on President Trump's stops in Israel and Saudi Arabia, Pete Heinlein, VOA White House correspondent, joins us right here in studio. Welcome to Africa 54. Now, first, tell us a little more about the President's key message on his stops in the Middle East.
I think his key message is two things that are intertwined. One is Iran should be isolated. He's talking about getting the Sunni Muslim countries, of which there are many. 1.5 billion of the 1.8 billion or so Muslims in the world are Sunnis. And they look to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia would like to be a leader. And the king of Saudi Arabia was able to bring almost all of the leaders of the Sunni Muslim countries to Riyadh to listen to the president's message, which was basically Iran is more their enemy than Israel, and that he's trying to re-establish, re-energize, reinvigorate this coalition that has once was fairly powerful in opposing Iranian Shia leadership.
Yes. Now, Peter, how significant is this trip, and has always been the case, a first foreign trip for the president?
Well, in the past, you can look the recent presidents, almost all of them have gone to Canada as their first visit. George W. Bush, I believe, went to Mexico, but they've all been, well, almost all of them have been in the region. It's important. Canada is huge to us. I mean, we're practically linked we're linked arm in arm with Canada. But this has thrown all the rule book right out the window, going to Saudi Arabia, the Vatican, Israel, the seats of the three great Abrahamic religions. So it's quite something. Then he goes on to meet with the G7 leaders and the NATO leaders.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely be talking a little more about this later on.
Oh,
Thanks a lot, Pete, for joining us today here
You're welcome.
in studio. That's VOA's White House correspondent Pete Heinlein joining us live in studio today.